Thousands of voters in Pennsylvania could have their ballots tossed out for a trivial paperwork error during the 2024 elections in the critical battleground state. As a result of a ruling on technical grounds from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, ballots missing a correct handwritten date on the outer return envelope must be rejected by election officials, even if the ballot was returned on time, cast by an eligible voter, and is otherwise completely valid.
This dating thing is just really peculiar. I mean, why? What is that date doing? You just so that people visualize this. You in Pennsylvania, you fill out your ballot. You have to put it inside an inner envelope, which is blank. That then goes inside an outer envelope, which we're about to talk about. But remember, the naked ballot thing was people not putting their ballots in the inner envelope, just putting them right in the outer envelope. Why those ballots should be rejected, another mystery that we have tackled before and which makes no sense. But now let's assume the voter knows they put it in that inner envelope, which is blank, and then put it in the outer envelope, which is also sealed. And on the outer envelope, they then have to sign their name, and then there's a place for a date. Now, what on earth is that date line doing? The county's date stamp when the ballot is received. So we know when the ballot was sent out, because the ballot was sent out by the county, and they have a record of that. We know when the ballot was returned because the county is date stamping when it's returned. So the date we're talking about now is what does the voter fill in that date? And in some counties in the past, they would take any date. Like you could put your birthday, you could put a date in the future, you could put a date in the past. There's questions about whether no date is a problem, misdating is a problem. I mean, look, some people look at that date and they're like, maybe I should put election day, because after all, that's the day that I wanted to make sure the ballot is counted by.
RNC Chair Michael Whatley said in a statement that this was a major victory for election integrity and a huge win to protect the vote in Pennsylvania that will secure common sense mail ballot safeguards. In reality, this date serves absolutely no purpose. In Pennsylvania, mail-in ballots are postmarked by the USPS and time-stamped by county election officials when they are received. This timestamp is what is used by election officials to determine if a ballot was returned on time, not that handwritten date on the outer envelope. So why is the RNC hailing this as a major victory? Could it be because rejecting mail-in ballots has a partisan impact on elections? The Associated Press reported that during the 2022 midterm elections in Pennsylvania, 2/3 of all of the 16,000 mail-in ballots that were rejected were from Democrats, because Democrats vote by mail at a higher proportion than their Republican counterparts. Analysis by the nonprofit newsroom VoteBeat, looking at Philadelphia specifically, found that voters from low-income communities and communities of color are more likely to have their ballots rejected for simple mistakes. While counties in Pennsylvania can offer what's known as cure procedures to notify voters and allow them to fix these simple mistakes, not every county does. According to reporting by Democracy Docket's Courtney Cohn, at least a quarter, sometimes over half of voters in certain counties who made these mistakes were able to correct their ballots and send them back in a certain deadline so that they could ultimately count. But Republicans actually sued to block every Pennsylvania county from being able to offer these cure procedures before the 2022 midterms. That lawsuit ended up getting dismissed.
It is an absolute national disgrace that the Republican National Committee and the Republican Party institutionally is, in the one hand, putting out these fancy tweets and things about their websites and how they're going to try to engage in vote by mail. But when the rubber meets the road, they are taking their donors' money and they are spending it all around the country, trying to prevent votes from counting. Like there's nothing fraudulent going on here. Giving voters the opportunity to cure mistakes is not promoting a lack of integrity. It is making sure that lawful ballots count, because as I said at the beginning, it is not always the voter's fault. Sometimes it's the fault of the election official. And the idea that, in North Carolina, they're hiding it, in Pennsylvania, they don't want it to happen. It is a national disgrace. When the Harlem Globetrotters used to play basketball, there was always a team that had played against them. I guess they're still around, called the Washington Generals. And they would go from arena to arena playing the Harlem Globetrotters, and they'd lose. They'd lose every game. And so the only thing that we have going for us is that the RNC has turned out to be like the Washington Generals of litigants. Like, they bring a lot of cases, but they lose a lot because the courts see through the nonsense that they are peddling.
From a lawsuit filed by Trump allies trying to overturn the 2020 election to a 2021 judicial race in Lehigh County and the 2022 Republican Senate primary election between Dr. Oz and David McCormick, the issue of whether to count these undated or misdated ballots in Pennsylvania has been the subject of lawsuits for years, with conflicting answers from both state and federal courts. In this specific case, the state Supreme Court, in a 4-3 ruling, threw out a lower court's decision on the matter for lacking jurisdiction because the lawsuit only named Philadelphia and Allegheny counties as defendants and not all of Pennsylvania's 67 counties. By failing to address the date issue on the merits, the court's move injects additional uncertainty into an election in a state whose 19 electoral votes is consequential to winning the presidential election. 3 of the court's 5 Democratic justices dissented, saying that the court should have ruled on the case's merits, noting that a prompt and definitive ruling on the constitutional question presented in this appeal is of paramount public importance, inasmuch as it will affect the counting of ballots in the upcoming general election. The RNC is who appealed the decision from the lower Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court, who ruled that this date requirement violates the state constitution. The opinion said the refusal to count undated or incorrectly dated but timely mail ballots submitted by otherwise eligible voters because of meaningless and inconsequential paperwork errors violates the fundamental right to vote recognized in the Free and Equal Elections Clause of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Meanwhile, federal courts are currently considering whether rejecting ballots simply due to this date issue runs afoul to the U.S. Constitution. A federal judge previously held that the rejection of mail-in ballots based on missing or incorrect dates violates the materiality provision of the Civil Rights Act, but the Third U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals overturned that decision. As of now, it is unclear whether those federal cases will be resolved before the election. Ahead of the 2024 election, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro announced redesigned mail-in ballots to give voters clearer instructions, decrease the number of rejected ballots, and ensure every legal vote is counted. The changes included a pre-printed 20 on the outer envelope to ensure voters write the current date and not their birth date, and highlighting the signature and date areas to make it clear that these fields must be filled out. However, this redesign still caused confusion amongst voters and election officials alike. Lancaster County was sued for rejecting ballots where a voter forgot to write the 2-4 after the 2-0, even though the State Department directed counties to count these ballots. As a result, for this year, the state ordered the entire 2024 to be pre-printed on the outer envelope for mail-in ballots. Hopefully, this will reduce the number of ballots that are rejected this year due to this dating technicality. Thanks for watching Democracy Docket. If you want to stay up to date on the latest voting and election news in the courts, make sure to subscribe to our newsletters. You can click the link right here on the screen or in the description of this video. I'm Sophie, and I'll see you next time.